Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining the session. Good afternoon, everyone. Today we would like to talk about how Komodo Health implements the best practices with Snowflake. Myself, Gana Chandrasekharan, I'm a senior sales engineer at Snowflake and I've been in the company for more than a year. So my specialization into data analytics, machine learning and AI.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Dinesh Kumar Muraswamy, architect in Komodo engineering team. I'm associated with Komodo for past 2+ years. And my expertise area is in data platform, data mesh, and SQL and NoSQL databases. And I really need to thank the Snowflake account team. Without there, we cannot complete this journey. So whenever we need, they will go through and pull out the strings and make the way to achieve our goal. Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Gana, for that.
Thank you very much. Before we get started, how many of you are in a real journey of your optimizing Snowflake environment? Pretty much all of you. Okay. This session is going to be a lot of information we're going to share, and stay till the end of the session if possible, because the later part of the section we're going to cover the crux of how we implemented certain phases and how do we approach a problem. We're going to talk about all of that. So you're going to get a lot more information. And what are we going to talk about today? So we will introduce about Komodo Health and what is the data flow architecture is going to look like, right? And then we will jump into how Komodo Health is actually have grown by using our Snowflake data cloud. And when you are on a journey of let's say multiple years with our data cloud, of course there are challenges that you'll have to address it. So what are some common challenges that Komodo Health has actually observed? And then what is the different approaches that we have taken to solve those challenges, right? We're going to talk about all of this and then we will take it over the question and answers, right? So I'll introduce a company. Even though Snowflake, I really love working for Komodo Health. Komodo Health is started 2014 and their founders all coming from physician background. So one problem they saw was there is a pharmaceutical data, there is a provider data, there is a payer data. All of them are completely isolated. Right? So when the founders saw that, how can I take the data and I can bring data analytics on a healthcare specifically, right? That's why the journey started, 2014. If you look at the vision, and the mission is how they can reduce the global burden of a disease, right? Now, I'll let Dinesh talk about how they process and ingest the data.
Yeah, so let's see now how we are going to achieve our mission by getting the healthcare data, right? So we are getting the data from different data sources, which are in different shape, different format, and in different velocity, and it scales in petabytes. Once we get this data, we will shape and process the data according to our business requirement using different tools available in the market as well as our own proprietary tools. And we will load those data into Snowflake. And from Snowflake, our customers will consume and they will create analytical insights on top of that. And they will join their hands to reduce our mission to reduce the global burden of disease.
How many of you are in healthcare? Perfect. Most of you, right? So you understand, right? When you basically the reason I want to talk about this is what the Komodo Health addresses. Let's say patient, if someone is actually gone sick, what do you basically do? You go to provider actually collecting your data, and then they maybe do some vital tests on you, maybe some additional data. And then they may refer you, go to the laboratory results, do some testing, additional data, and then go to EMR, go to some scanning. So there is going to be additional scanning and images data, go to pharmacy, collect the drugs, and then pharmaceutical company was responsible for collecting the information, payer insurance data. You see that all the data are completely isolated, right? That's what Komodo Health is solving a problem, bringing the entire data sets, healthcare data sets, and then running some analytics. And Snowflake is powering Komodo Health to drive that, to deliver that insights. So I want to give a quick example. A lot of pharmaceutical companies are talking about, okay, how this drug is performing when comparatively with others. So what happens during pre-pandemic and post-pandemic and to specific condition of a patient? Those are insights that Komodo Health is delivering for the customers. Now, Dinesh talked about how we are collecting all the data, right? The payers data, providers data. So Komodo Health has a whole master data set, what do we call as a global map foundation, right? This is an important for them. So every day the data getting ingested, we are talking about over 330 millions of patients record. So you might be wondering how many of the encounters are real, right? So Komodo claims it as of yesterday, it's about 60 to 70% of the data is all unique in terms of patients. and then 15 millions of patient encounters that happening every single day. And they have over 150 millions of payer, a complete data set they have. And they're streaming in all the data, right? It's getting into one giant of a global master database, what we call a healthcare map. And this healthcare map is all loaded in Snowflake. And then we'll talk about like how we are going to use this database, master database, and then delivering this application to our customers.
So now we will discuss about how we are processing data, and finally how our products are being developed on top of the healthcare map data, right? So as we've seen, we are collecting data from different data sources, which scales in petabytes, and in different formats like Parquet, CSV, and ORC formats. And what we do, like once we get the data, we are going to process the data according to our requirement. To process the data, we are using a technology stack. What are the technology stacks we are using? Let's see some of those. Elasticsearch, Spark, Kubernetes, Kafka, and Apache Airflow, right? So Apache Spark is the main tool which we are using in our environment to process, apply our business rules, and share the data according to power the data to our healthcare map, right? So that is the layer where Spark does. And what is the function of Kubernetes over here? The Apache Spark is running on top of Kubernetes by consuming the compute, right? And what is Apache Airflow does in our environment? It schedules the jobs, batch jobs to run, and whenever any new data is coming in, the Apache Airflow will kick off and pull the jobs, right? So that's what the Apache Airflow does. And let's discuss about Amazon Redshift. Why we have Redshift over here? Before we get into a journey of Snowflake, we were using our environment in Amazon Redshift. And during the migration, we don't want to migrate all the data. We want to move the latest amount of data, new data into Snowflake. And for some customers, they want the old data for the compliance perspective. So we retained only those data in Amazon Redshift. That's why you can see the technology stack available in our environment. So now we have seen the technology stack. Let's go and see about how the data sets which you are received from different data sources and how it's powering our healthcare map, and from there how we are generating our data products, right? So when we say that we are getting the data sources, different data sources, as Ghana explained, like payer or claims or whatever may be, right? We are getting everything in a Parquet file format. We will massage the data and create the data sets as schemas in Snowflake, right? So once we have those data, we will try to combine all the data sets and pull that all the informations into our healthcare map. So when you go and look into, okay, if I want to see about COVID information, you will get end-to-end data, like what has happened before pre-COVID and what has happened post-COVID. Like you will get the number of insights on this healthcare map data. On top of that, we have our data products, right? If you see that Sentinel is our product which is running on top of a healthcare map, Prism, and we have Aperture and analytic offerings. So this is our technology stack and how we have created our products, and this is the flow for our data flow. So how our data flow architecture works and what are the technology and process and how we are doing the data quality, we can see in this. Once we receive the data from different data sources, we are placing those data in a data lake. So once the files are landed in the data lake, what we'll do is first we'll go and check the data quality, right? We cannot process just like that and inject in our final table, right? So we need to see the data quality. If the data quality QC is passed, then we have the Airflow job which will try to segregate the data and load the data into the Snowflake staging tables. Once the data is applied into the Snowflake staging tables, then Apache Spark will come into play. It will apply all of our business rules which needed for our products, right? Once that is done, then the final materialized table, which called as a common data model, is generated, and from there we will send the data to our downstream applications, and they will try to process all the data and provide the final healthcare map data information to our customers. So now let's look into the architecture, which has AA strategy. Ghana will explain about that, what is meant by AA strategy when we keep going. So as we see, like the data is coming in from the providers, and what we are doing, like we have the different set of data sources. We are ingesting the data by scheduling the Airflow and batch jobs in a different formats, and the combination of all the data which is creating our final data product data model over there. And with this particular architecture, what we are doing is we are getting the data to a customer as soon as possible, as early as possible. we can say that near real time kind of a data, which helps to create a greater insight for our customers. What are you gonna?
So that is the first step, right? Getting a product, again, Komodo started building a data products on top of Snowflake. But the question is how we are going to build the data products and then give it to the customer, right? So the Komodo as of stands today, they have a huge multi-tenant architecture, which we is talking about over hundreds of our customers. So we have to think in a way that how we are going to secure, how we are going to dedicate certain database objects, along with that, how we are going to apply the roles and everything, right? So what you're going to do this, that's what we call as a custom domain. So think about customer one, we'll have a customer domain, we'll have a bunch of database objects that includes database of reads, writes, and then talk about warehouses and separate access schema roles and all of that. So what do we call internally is a AAA strategy, right? What is a AAA? So number one thing we should make sure that Komodo provides access to the customer, what we call as an authentication, right? If a customer one comes and logs into Komodo platform, they should authenticate properly. And second, what kind of authorization that we're going to provide? Like what kind of permission that you want to give us specific database objects, that we should control that. The third important, the A means it's a auditing. That's a very, very important, like who has access to specific database objects. So what is the data retention that we are going to have? What is the activity? What is the query profile? What is even query they even run, right? Getting the sort of that strategy implemented, it's so important for Komodo. That's what we have done. So again, these are like multi-tenant architecture, right? So again, we also learned, and once we started expanding this architecture to, let's say, 200, 300 customers, and it's getting so cumbersome, which we're going to talk about some of the challenges down the line. But just let you know, should I go and build all my customers directly in a custom domain? No, you can initially, but you have to think about long term. It may not be, you don't want to do multi-tenant. Maybe you think about creating separate accounts because of different challenges. I'll talk about it when we go to different one. Now, once we start laying out this Komodo data cloud, right? So we'll have different accounts. Let's say a Komodo, by the way, runs standard, enterprise, and also business critical edition accounts as well. It's all in Komodo data cloud. How do we explain the DR? Because some of the requirements that Komodo also has maintain the replication of the databases. That's in case if there is any failure happens, how we are going to do that, right? So we also have replication that built into the product. So basically replicates the data directly to one of the other region that Snowflake supports it as well. So both primary account and DR account as well. Komodo does like unidirectional replication now, but we're also looking to scale that into multi-directional replications down the line as well. Now, okay, so now we started building this, right, over a period of time. Of course, what did we have? Let's talk about what we talked about, and I'll summarize this. So we talked about what is Komodo Health, what do they stand, what is the mission of reduce a global burden disease. We talked about the architecture, and they started building the architecture of keeping the multiple customers supported in multi-tenant architecture. Now, the next thing is, okay, as they started building out, they started seeing so many number of challenges, right? So I'll let Dinesh talk about some of the challenges that they observed.
Okay. As we see how we are processing the data in the earlier slides, the first one, the common driving factor is inefficient use of Snowflake platform resources. What does that mean here, right? So when you keep on growing, you are trying to schedule your pipeline jobs. In your pipeline, you have mixed workloads, like larger queries and smaller queries will be there, right? So people always think that, okay, when I have a larger query, I need to go for a larger compute resources. So you might be running 4XL or 2XL queries to complete your job in a short span of time. But in the same pipeline, you will have your small queries as well. Are we utilizing the compute properly? No, we are wasting the resources when the small queries are running in. So obviously, our compute credits are going high, and our cost on the compute cost also will go high, right? So we will see about how we can try to avoid that. And next one is legacy business process, right? So when you try to create a product, there will be business rules and business process will be there, right? Those are not stagnant. Always there is a way we need to evolve and try to see what are the innovations are available for us to improve our products and improve our business process. And next one is difficult, complex queries and expensive SQL queries, right? So since we are growing, we have a number of customers, and we have our products are keep on growing, we will have a different set of queries running in, right? So some of the queries will take time, and whatever the queries are coming from the customers, sometimes it might be inefficient, right? So we cannot consider that everyone will write a very good query. Sometimes we'll get into bad queries. We need to catch on time and try to see how we can save the compute, right? So that we'll look into it. And what is the poor administration of historical data, right? So when you try to start a fresh application, you'll be start injecting the data slowly, and your data keep on growing. But is it your applications and products are using the historical data? No, but still we have that, and it consuming our storage, and we are going to pay more for our storage in Snowflake for that, right? Then this one, inefficient oversight, is slightly linked with difficult, complex queries and expensive queries. So if those queries are running, how you are going to capture it, right? Are we going to go to query profile or query history and check always, okay, what is my long running query? It's a tedious task. How we can overcome that particular manual process over there, right? And then enable to scale out competing resources. Why we called out that? Because for us, our product requirement, we are in standard edition, so you cannot scale out, right? We have different editions as well. We have standard, we have enterprise, and we have business criticals as well, right? So if you are in standard edition, what are the drawbacks you will see, and how you'll try to overcome, right? Those are the things we are going to cover in that.
So this is where we step in, right? When you look at these challenges, now how are you going to address it? Now, can I just quickly look at it, replatform the architecture, or can I just go and tell Komodo, okay, this is a queries that you're running wrong, running queries, can we go and fix it? Or we just go and innovate, right? And with new Snowflake features. It's when you look at this holistically, when we brainstorm with the Komodo Health, okay, let's think about what is the business process for building data products, right? That's an important. Okay, so let's say if customer one comes in and asking for Komodo certain specific COVID data, and then Komodo runs specific business rules. By looking at the business rules, how long it's going to take to create the data products, right? Sometimes some product might take 2 minutes, sometimes they take about 10 hours, sometimes take 5 hours, 1 hour. So looking at the timeline, that's the first thing we looked at it. And then by looking at even dive deep into this, okay, what are the business rules that drives that? And then based on that, we made some decisions to eliminate a lot of business processes that we don't need it, right? Second, we did a replatform the application. When I say like the application that are analytical application that consuming that Snowflake resources, how we can provide some recommendations, how we can create some migrating to directly serverless architecture and so on. And then management monitoring, it becomes so vital because it's not only you are managing a Snowflake environment, but also how we can build observability platform overall across Komodo Health. That's what we have done. And finally, driving innovation, which talk about what happens if the query has high memory intensive workload. Like, can we just run it on a standard workload or run it in Snowpark or Snowpark optimized instances workloads? And then how did we do like even building a forecasting within a forecasting SQL function within a Snowflake, be able to forecast some of the data that the Komodo Health is driving. We're going to talk about all of this in next couple of slides, right? Okay, let's dive deep into business process elimination, right? So I talked about the Komodo requirements, building up the product, standing up the product. It's so quickly, it's so important. We're talking about the founder usually says, get me a product is available next 2 minutes, or 3 minutes, 5 minutes. So looking at this data business rules, there are important things, what we call is the data pipeline, right? Data pipeline has multiple elements. I mean, like how the data is getting extracted from the global map foundation, and then how are you processing your data, and then how are you storing in your architecture, how are you storing a destination, like creating a new schema so that you can deliver the data, that product to the customers. So the whole pipeline, right? So that needs to be transformed for different products level. That's what we have realized. And there is unexpected volume of data that's always coming into Komodo Health. And then how do we address it? So we thought, okay, we need to define a simpler and easier way to build an ETL process. So that's what we address it through dynamic tables. How many of you have known that dynamic tables have implemented now? No? Yes. Okay, cool. So I'll talk about how we implemented this in Komodo Health, how it's actually saved 20% of the cost they're consuming from Snowflake. So what do you see in the left side architecture, right? So let's say if the customer one wants, okay, I want to build a data product, then what happens is there is a view that's getting created. The view will have link to all the databases, perform some joins and aggregation, everything. So here is what happens. Let's say if customer one asks for the data product, that consists of hundreds of cohorts. Here, when I say cohort, that means a separate definition of some schemas and database tables and everything, right? So each and every single cohort needs to scan 50 billions of records from each and every single table, right? Again, these are like, they have to go and search every single time. That means you're talking about hundreds of cohorts, and you have to scan each and every single cohort 50 billion times and get the data, right? This actually have taken like 2 hours something to complete for one single customer, right? One single data product. So think about if you have overall like 200 data products, how long is it going to take time, right? So that is a process we simplified with the help of dynamic table. So what dynamic table have done, like defining a simplified way of how you SQL, like ETL pipeline. At the same time, you will be able to do the refresh automatic refresh of this data from being on the two tables. And so that number one, we're able to join the tables, process the data internally within each and every single table. Then you also able to automatically refresh this pipeline. And you can declaratively define this ETL pipeline through SQL statements, right? That's basically it is. Now, what happens is, as outcome of this architecture, now let's say if Komodo Health requests for the data products, now let's say now you are scanning only like 30 billions of records, not 50 billions of records, and then you're focusing only on the dynamic table, right? It doesn't even to go back and search for all the data from the backend tables. It becomes so fast. It saves about 20% of the total cost they're spending with Snowflake. It becomes cheaper for them. So let me get into second phase 2. Okay, now that we've defined this business rules, we looked at this, okay, we changed this pipeline. Now, what do we need to do is, how do we re-platform this underlying architecture, right? It becomes so important. So now, when I say re-platform in Snowflake, there are multiple things. One is, we always have a concern of what warehouse are we going to provision, 2XL, 3XL, 4XL, and it goes along. So how do we build recommendation on top of it so able to fix that scaling up or scaling down issues? And then how do we enable the collaboration of data from one account to other customers? How do we enable all this architecture? So the way I look at this, it's a bigger problem to solve, right? It's not a smaller problem. It's a definitely bigger problem to address. The way I address this in another phased approach, okay, this is important for us to consider. So number one, like whenever Komodo loads the data, so what are the best practices built on top of it? Maybe it's a bigger file, load it into smaller file. Maybe you can define a governance on the data. Maybe it's a time for us to use Snowflake serverless tool to load the data directly in Snowflake. These are changes that first thing we have done for when it comes to data loading, right? Search, very, very important. And so Komodo has a lot of smaller tables and also bigger tables. We're talking about over 100,000 tables, right? 100,000. Think about the bigger scale. Now, when you load the data in Snowflake generally, so you don't have to define a clustering key. It basically defines natural clustering key for day and region and the month. It's all possible. But Komodo always need to have a custom clustering key just because that's how they're going to search for a specific cohort ID or basically patient ID and so on. So now what happens is search becomes so common. So whenever they define a clustering table, they have to make sure they define the right clustering key, because if you don't do that, that microprocessing pruning will not work. Then you will not see the performance differences, right? That's something that we have to. And also we enable search optimization on certain features. For example, if Komodo wants to understand, if customer wants to understand, give me the top 5 physicians in Vegas, top 5 in cancer data, like give more top 5 symptoms that you typically for COVID-19. So those are like specifically on a point and lookup queries. That's where search optimization comes in the picture. They've actually simplified it as well. Now we'll talk about simplification, right? So there are a few things, especially if you have a larger data sets. And Komodo used to run queries on larger data sets. I mean, Komodo, not only Komodo runs it, the customer also runs the queries, right? There are two different definitions. So how do we take this, breaking this larger data set and breaking into smaller data set, and then you run the queries, right? It becomes so important. How do we even figure out that? They have monitoring tool that built into to figure out the smaller data sets, and then you're able to achieve that. And then finally, talked about data products. This is what I was talking about. So Snowpipe streaming and also dynamic table to help you build the data products. But on top of it, how you're going to monetize it, right? And finally, Komodo also builds the application using Python, Scala, Java, and especially they use a lot of Streamlit to get it done, right? Now, I do want to show the technical architecture, like if you're really interested in like how, one more slide, let's talk about, okay, how do you join the tables and how do you search healthcare data and combining the data and how you're going to search for the data and removing the complexity, how we're going to use Snowpark and then Streamlit to build an application on top of Snowflake, right? This is all Komodo is using it, and they do build the recommendation engine for warehouse instances to recommend basically what instances they can use for specific queries, right? They basically detect that on scale and dynamically, and then they will allocate the resources and so on.
Thank you, Gana. So now we'll speak about metric system at scale. So since we are growing and our applications, everything is growing, how you can monitor that, right? How we can get the metrics of end-to-end application, end-to-end metrics. So that is the one we are trying to solve as part of this. And then what is your trends and patterns? Like, okay, which are the tables are mostly used by your customers, right? And what are the joint conditions they are using it? And how frequently they are trying to query that particular table. So those information are needed. Based on that, we'll try to improve our product and make the customers happy, right? So that is very important key factor for us as well. And then how we can efficiently improve the data available to the customer as soon as possible. And what is the data quality, right? And then main thing like auditing is very important for us. We need to understand that what is the log on, log off, is that what is the workload, because we need to understand that if customers are keep on growing, Is it possible for the warehouse to handle the workload or not? We need to think about in all the aspects. So let us go to next slide and we can think about how we are trying to resolve this, right? So Komodo doesn't hold the data only in Snowflake. We have some of the products running on open source RDS as well, right? So if you see here, the DB exports like Snowflake, RDS, and another open sources. And then audit logging, right? We have the application audit logging, application tracing, all the information is available. And then the security metrics. So we have some data available in RDS as well as in Snowflake as well for the security as well as cost metrics. We created our own way of getting the data from the Snowflake provided views, right? From there, we created the list of tables over here. And then we have the data product. This is our main product. As we explained, it powers our healthcare map. And then we have the pipeline which refreshes the data into the customer environment. We collect all this metrics information and put all the data, process all the data into Snowflake. Once Snowflake has all the data, using the BI tools like Superset, Tableau, or Streamlit tabs, it will help us to create the overall insight about our products and how is the usage and what was happening in the real time. As well as the main thing is like if you have a different number of databases, different kind of accounts, right? How you will try to maintain your alerts and dashboards. It's very tough for us, right? So if you see here, this is a Snowflake federated account, which gets information from all the Snowflake databases into one account. From there, it is easy for us to monitor and achieve what we want to maintain so that we can scale our metric system. So driving innovations. Here, how the innovations helped us to improve our products, right? And how we are delivering the data to the customer as soon as possible. So let's look in detail here, right? So how we can support the scalability and the efficient growth of our products, right? And how to continue the leverage the data frame programming languages. And let's see about how we can remove the complex workflows by leveraging the innovations available in the market as well as in Snowflake. So here, when you see that the data is coming from different sources from the healthcare data, and we are processing it, right? So data collaboration, Gana, can you take it up with this?
So I think if you remember last time I told you about, we had used our multi-tenant architecture, like over 200 customers are sharing single Komodo provider account. We want to break it down. We want to break that architecture because once you reach certain scale, you will have challenges. Like Komodo has over 20,000 customer roles, right? We're talking about millions of, like 100,000 database objects or a couple of millions of queries that run every single month. We talk multiple petabytes of data. So we have to break it down the logic and then make each and every single customer make a separate account, right? We're called managed external account. So what do you think about these are like managed external account for each and every single customer? Now we are running a AAA strategy across not only Komodo account, but also all the customer accounts as well to provide secure access and so on. So one important thing that feature that we work with Komodo to launch is data collaboration. That's a direct sharing of data from Komodo's specific proprietary data that they bring through analytics and then share it across each and every single customer, right? That's a unique collaboration. Now, let's say if the customer wants COVID data, the COVID data gets generated data products and data products does read-only share to this customer. They have access to the specific data, right? And then they will have own database to run the queries again.
Okay. So now let's look into the process. What are the innovations helped us to reduce the business process and business rules over there? As we saw in the earlier slides, dynamic table is one of the classic example where it is trying to reduce the business rules. Like it has to scan different set of data. So in the pipeline, when you see that, when you're trying to process the data, you have to run a query and create a view on top of that and merge with other view. And if you see the layers are keep on increasing. With the help of dynamic table, we reduce those layers, right? And you can easily process it and your compute will go down as well, because your data is already materialized with the help of the dynamic table over there.
Yeah. So next one is Snowpark. So every single customer here, like customer 1, customer 2, like their developers are very much comfortable writing Python, not a SQL. So once the innovation of Snowpark has been launched, then you started using Snowpark, right? They're creating a session, they start writing a Python code. There are two benefits you get out of this. One is, of course, code conversion of Python to SQL automatically does it through Snowpark. Session will take care of it. Second, as when they started processing some processing data like table join or with merge statements, they saw like a 20% performance improvement because the data is all in Snowflake and then with secure sandbox where all the Python libraries are located, right? So you're not operating anything on data outside of Snowflake. Snowpark will help you to get this, and Komodo sees like 20% performance benefits. On top of it, code conversion also happens. So a lot of customers on external customer, they started using Snowpark to talk to Snowflake.
So let's look about the accelerated analytics. So whenever you have the products, you need to see the analytics of that product, right? So what is your fill rate and what is your count, and those informations you have to get it. So in our organization, we used to collect the metrics information on every weekend. When we try to run that particular job, it's taking nearly like 1.5 days, right? How we can get the metric as soon as possible, how we can reduce the time frame we have. So we leverage the Snowpark high optimized instance, which Snowflake has released in last summit, I believe. We leverage that because those queries are high memory intensive queries. So Snowpark optimized instance will give you more memory so that processing will happen in the memory. It won't do more I/O. It will reduce your throughputs and your query will complete in faster. So magically, like if the job is running for more than 24 hours, it's completed in 8 hours now, right? So that is the classic example over there. And next is Streamlit. As everyone attend the keynote, we know the importance of Streamlit application. So we are using the Streamlit to create the analytics for our internal teams. We will share that cost metrics information or some other information to our teams using Streamlit app. So let's speak about the scale out here, right? What we did, like, okay, we are in standard edition. Why can't we go to enterprise edition for some of the use cases, whatever we for the reason we are in standard, right? So what we did, like, we took a specific workload, which is running on 4XL, and it's take a huge amount of time to complete the entire pipeline process, right? We took that workload and put that workload in an enterprise edition. What we did, like, we did scale down and scale out, which means like from 4XL we went down to 2XL, and we increased the max cluster from 1 to 8. So which help us to run the queries in parallel, right? Because you know that at any given point in time, the one cluster can run 8 queries, right? So when we move to enterprise edition, the number of queries running in that pipeline is more, right? If you take like you're spinning up 4 clusters, so 4 times of 8, 32 queries will run at a given point in time for you. But that is not applicable in the standard edition because we are using 4XL. I am using only 8 queries. Other queries are queuing up. I'm increasing my total elapsed time and it's getting delayed by delivering the data to the customers, right? So when we think about, okay, can we move to enterprise edition? We will have a little bit of doubt. Okay, my compute credit is very high when I go to enterprise. So that's for some people it will stop to move further, right? So what we did, okay, why can't we do a POC? So we did a POC and surprisingly we see that the credits went down compared to the standard edition. Because the elapsed time went down because you are scaling out and you reduced your warehouse size from 4XL to 2XL and your consumed credits per hour is going down and your elapsed time is totally went down compared to your standard edition. That helped us to save, if you see that the number was there, approximately like 15% for the particular workload, not for the entire product. So now we are exploring the option of, okay, can we move all the workloads from standard to enterprise? Still, the analysis in progress for us. So these are the applications or products which we are, as a SaaS company, we are providing in the market. Prism, Aperture, Iris, Pulse, and Sentinel. So let's see about Sentinel, what it does in the real world, right? So for customers, we will provide whatever the data they want. If they want a entire healthcare map data, we provide it to them. Or if they want any specific subset of cohort information, then we'll provide only those. On top of that, those customers will generate the meaningful insights for them. As Ghana explained, like, okay, what is the success rate of my drug, right? And you might have seen a lot of metrics Komodo is publishing in LinkedIn as well, like what is the pre and post COVID information. So those kind of insights will get triggered from our Sentinel products. And Prism, where it will try to help you to get the HCP's information.
All right, that's all we got. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.